And so when you're asking somebody, why don't you look within? Why don't you change? You're saying, why don't you just die? That's really what we're asking people. Why don't you just die? Well, dying is scary.
We talked about why aren't people exploring within, but like why aren't they?
So the identity structure of who we are, people call that the ego. But the problem I have with the word ego is there's a lot of conflation with the idea of ego with hubris and pride and a lot of the different shadow aspects of ego.
Right, like ego's bigger than just the
The way that we use the word, it's your identity structure. It's your identity. It's who you are in identity. It's the thing that separates you from the complete homogeneous, wave of the divine. Like ego says, I am, but in saying I am, it's also saying I am not. This is my body. It's mine. And it's, of course, connected to all of the earth and contained of all of the particles of the mother and the water and the air, of course.
The wave is not an illusion. It's an appearance of separate.
Right.
It's not an illusion of separate.
So, and that's an important aspect. The identity structure says, well, at least in some densities, in some dimensional realities, this is me and me is different than you. And so it's very important because that's what allows us to explore and allows us to differentiate. That's a vehicle that allows us to really play. So, but the problem is that the ego can then become an entity in and of itself. And that entity cannot evolve very well unless the way that it evolves is much more like the phoenix. It's much more like a caterpillar evolves into a butterfly, which is it turns into goo and then it sprouts wings, or it turns from a bird, it goes to ash and then it gets its fire wings. This is how the ego has to actually evolve. It has to molt. It's very difficult for the ego to change in micro ways. It's very stuck and stubborn. So when you look within, you're threatening to kill this identity construct that you have. So you're facing death. So deep is compassion for those who are afraid to look within, because if they see within and they see that, yes, I am this ego, this identity construct, but I'm also all that is. I'm also the embodiment of Eros. I'm also connected to all things. I also have a soul lineage where this is just one life in the advent calendar of who I really am. You start to see that, and then all of a sudden, that identity complex, that structure, it has to die. And so when you're asking somebody, why don't you look within? Why don't you change? You're saying, why don't you just die? That's really what we're asking people. Why don't you just die? Well, dying is scary.
You face your biggest fears, go into your darkest pain.
Exactly.
The most embarrassing, and then dissolve into goo.
Yeah. And that's really what it feels like. And people will defend their identity structure. And they'll defend it as if they were defending their life because they're actually identified with it. So their attentional system is fused to their identity. And as it's fused, their whole being is fused to that. So anything that challenges it is a threat.
So this to me feels like why meditation is so important as like a precursor and as an integration tool to this work, because every day, twice a day, then you are transcending the left brain and connecting to the right. You're transcending the identity and connecting with the thing that lives beyond the death of the body. So if you're doing that in microdoses every single day, then when we do it in some initiation of a medicine ceremony or an actual facing of death or dissolving into a lover, like you're prepared at least to some degree. Like you practice it, like you at least know that there is an ocean beyond just this wave. So I'm curious to know like what your meditation journey has been like. Like I know we've danced in some parts of it, but I know your meditation journey is very vast. Yeah. So can you feel into like who you were before you started meditating versus who you are now and how that journey has changed you?
So, I think there's kind of a school of thought, and that school of thought is that if you reach these altered states of consciousness with anything other than meditation, you're cheating. And this is the only true and pure way. And if you're going to be like really a good person, you don't need anything else. And, like I'll comment about a medicine journey and just like, I hope that one day you realize that you don't need all that. I was like, yeah, I realize that. And also they're amazing.
I don't need it. It's really fun.
Yeah, for sure. Have you done it? Like, it's awesome.
I've been teaching meditation for like 13 years and I love drugs.
Yes, right. So I was given the gift of being able to use the bridge. I consider all of these medicines like a chakaruna, which is the Quechua word for bridge. And so it's a bridge to other states of consciousness. Meditation for me has been something that actually, our meditations together, when I started to learn with you, that was one of the best experiences of actually having a practice that could drop me into really deep states of consciousness. It drops me into that kind of void space, where everything falls away and rest is happening. And of course, you have all of these different talks that I'm sure everybody has heard, but you get this kind of quantum rest in that state where everything is just dissolved in this beautiful way. And you're such a master at teaching that. And thank you for the personal attention and helping to illuminate that for me.